What's up, gamers? Aaron Shack here, and we have 10 new minutes of gameplay based on the history of the open world of Gotham City. So let's check it out.
In the 1650s, 5 families left Europe, eventually landing on the rain-swept islands that pepper the mouth of what would one day be called Gotham River. Those families, the Waynes, the Cobblepots, the Elliots, the Arkhams, and the Kanes, would build a colonial fort together and sow the seeds of centuries of dominance in the area. Gotham City was born. The city quickly spread beyond its original bounds.
So first of all, just look at how tall a lot of these skyscrapers are. So they are saying that this is the biggest city that we've seen in a Batman game before, the biggest Gotham City interpretation. We're definitely going to have some tall buildings that we can leap from and glide across the city, and I don't know. I just think it's going to show like a lot of verticality and depth.
5 boroughs, and in each, one of those 5 founding families would take root. In the early days, the Kanes established themselves on Gotham's natural harbour, now known as Historic Gotham, tying the family to their new country's military might, building ships and weapons of war. By the 1850s, Gotham had become a major trade hub, helped along by the industrialist Cobblepots and their smoke-belching Southside steel mills. Gotham continued to transform over time. In the 1920s, the Elliots took hold of the 20th century's newest means of control, mass media, and built downtown Gotham in a new Art Deco image. By the 1960s, Gotham had truly become a patchwork of industry and architecture. The Arkhams settled in North Gotham, building their famous asylum. Yes, it's in the game, and no, it's not as you've previously seen it. The Waynes, meanwhile, built their billions in New Gotham, helping advance the town into a new technological age. Which brings us to the present day, and the Gotham you'll be exploring as Batman's protégés in Gotham Knights, an open world as soaked in history as it is by neon light and vigilante.
So we are seeing, with this same snapshot of the city, we're still seeing some of the old city still there as they sort of build on top of it. It's really cool.
Shadow. Warner Brothers Games Montreal created that history early in production, a whole new timeline for a whole new version of Gotham City. And it isn't merely window dressing. The timeline informs everything from the plot, to the gameplay, to the game's biggest mystery, the Court of Owls conspiracy. The team didn't just build an open world to play in, it's truly trying to build a city.
Interesting. Alright, so here's our first look at the map. It looks like we're seeing different symbols based on characters and villains that are in the game. We got the map, case files, something blurred out here. Challenges, gear, abilities, database, email. I guess we got a quick travel to the Belfry here in the bottom right corner, and you can also have waypoints. Looks like there's various collectibles, faction presence, criminal activity. So I guess basically maybe certain areas might be certain levels. Looks like Blackgate Prison might also have a presence here. Southside the Cauldron, Old Gotham, Tricorner Island.
Key to this take on Gotham are those 5
Okay, there we go. North Gotham, Downtown, New Gotham, Historic, Lower Gotham. And these are all informed by the 5 families.
boroughs and the worldview of the families that historically controlled them.
So for us, the 5 boroughs, it started with the families. The families moved there, they built imposing structures within those districts. So then we build around that to where the identity for those districts really is based off of that family.
Within those boroughs, the team tries to tell stories without simply having someone speak them out loud.
If you visit a city in real life, it's hard to tell.
Okay, so you have a timer
in those boroughs,
to choose where you want to teleport
without simply having someone speak them
as
out
Robin.
loud.
You can set the altitude, and then you have,
simply having someone speak them out
looks
loud.
like 8
those
seconds.
Boroughs, the team tries to tell stories without simply having someone speak them out loud.
That's really dope.
If you visit a city in real life, it's hard to tell some of that history. So because we're making a game, really what we want to do is kind of obviously reveal some of that stuff. So there's a lot of areas that are kind of stuck in time, like even something as, kind of generic as construction, like it becomes interesting when it's halted construction or it's it's now abandoned and overgrown, or it's ruins. All those things are more interesting for the player than just a modern city. So we tried to.
So also word is that we're gonna have indoor locations that we can explore as well. Like it's not just gonna be a big empty city that we can't go in any buildings. So I kind of like that.
Thing for the player than just a modern city. So we tried to have a lot of those areas where it's almost stuck in time, so the player can really experience what it was back then a little bit too, and see how the city evolved.
The team has historical and gameplay basis for every new environment. Take the Cauldron, built into the Cobblepot's lower Gotham area.
We always would like to tell a story with every borough, and there's one specific one that is not necessarily related to the family, but is an effect of some of the projects that those families undertook, which was a mining operation that happened in a riverbed. So they decided to wall off two sides of a portion in the water, and they dredged it for mining operations. It would attract workers for the mining operation. It was low-cost housing. It remained like actually a slum.
The Cauldron's history is written into its walls, with tumble-down buildings and cramped, unplanned streets, all set in the shadow of the more prosperous districts around it. But all of this is a distinct gameplay choice too.
This spot is kind of like a transition area between the financial district and the south side. So we have like two very different themes, while being in a third theme that is very organic, has a complete different way for the player to navigate over.
Looks like we have some parkour here, we're able to navigate the rooftops like so. Very interesting.
So the player always has the choice.
So it's more than just, grappling from one building to another, gliding.
For the player to navigate over. It's a lot more parkouring. So the player always has the choice to pick the best tool and the best navigation verb to be as efficient as possible. And with different neighborhoods that will give you different experiences.
This interplay of history and gameplay can be seen across the city. The once beautiful Robinson Park is a symbol of the city's decay, but it's also an open space where your usual stealth tactics may no longer work in the same way. The enormous Elliott Centre is a literally gilded reminder of the family patriarch, complete with a museum exhibit about the family inside, and it's also a complex, multi-layered bit of vertical level design built to house the Mr. Freeze boss battle later in the game. And it's not just that timeline that acts as history here either. While this is a new take on Gotham, it includes many references to the comic books it's drawing from. Of course, there are buildings you'll know, right down.
So what happens here if you run out of time teleporting? Do you have to glide out of it? We haven't really seen that.
It's not just that timeline that acts as history here either. While this is a new take on Gotham, it includes many references to the comic books.
If your teleport ends right there.
Of course, there are buildings you'll know, right down to deep-cut references like Noonan's sleazy bar from Garth Ennis's Hitman series. But the very fabric of Gotham itself acts as an Easter egg in places. Perhaps most interesting is that this Gotham has a public history and a secret history. We already know the game will centre on the Court of Owls, a shadowy, manipulative group born of the founding families. Gotham itself will reflect that conspiratorial past too.
One of the things that we love about the Court of Owls, aside from the fact that it's a new, fresh addition to the Batman canon, is that they represent a threat that is so embedded and so intrinsic to Gotham City that even Batman doesn't.
I read
know
these
about it.
issues.
And the
I
notion
love
of a
it.
Threat that is so intimately tied to a city that he considers to be his city, that he knows like the back of his hand, that he's been patrolling for literally decades at this point. That's a very intimidating and scary idea. With that in mind, what we knew is that we needed to give you a sense of Gotham's history in order to be able to show all the ways in which the court is embedded in that. That
Very
feeling
true.
that Gotham is kind of an adversary, and that Court of Owls is the embodiment of that, the personification of it.
The phrase commonly used at the studio for this is that they didn't just build up, creating those hugely visible landmark buildings and stories for every new district, but that they also built down.
We started to imagine how the form of the city could be affected by that, and it started kind of helped suggest a geography, an urban geography to the city, going all the way back to like the late 1600s. And then we started to think, okay, well, what were the major events in history that they would have reacted to? is it the Revolutionary War? Is it the kind of exploitation of the West, like the building of the railroads? Like all of these ideas became part of that conversation and allowed us to kind of build layers of accreted history.
Wow.
And we built it up and we built it down. Like we said, okay, what's buried under the city? Like what are the hidden secrets that you can find in the course of investigating the Court of Owls?
Naturally, the team isn't talking too much about what those buried secrets might be, but we see hints of it as we're shown Gotham's open world. A seemingly nondescript building might be a gang hideout, which leads to a tunnel system that brings you into an exit into Gotham that you would never have guessed at, for example.
We want the Court of Owls to feel like they're involved in everything. If you were to go to a major city in North America, like often they'll build a city on top of another one. Like Chicago, like they had the fire, they just built on top of it because it's not worth like rebuilding, destroying and rebuilding. So what the undergrounds allow us to do is kind of reveal that cross section of the city. So we have areas like that where you drop in, you keep going and you see things that you didn't know were there, that you didn't know the city was built on top of. And I think that's a really cool element. We try to allow the player to see kind of behind the scenes of the city, go under the surface, and as well as seeing it from up high from the bigger landmarks.
The result of all this work is that this take on Gotham aims to feel like a legitimate place, not just a sandbox for spandex crime fighting. We've heard before that this will be the largest Gotham ever made in game form.
It
But
looks
that's not
that
what
way.
the developers are proud of.
We made a very big Gotham City, but what I think is really unique to Gotham Knights is the density of it. Sometimes I will be searching for something or fighting a crime and not realize how close to me something else is happening that I'm going to want to interact with.
Let me go back here.
Close to me something.
So we have different symbols, different landmarks, maybe different types of missions, markers that we can place. Interesting.
Something else is happening that I'm going to want to interact.
Organ trafficking. An organ was stolen by criminals. Retrieve it before it expires. Difficulty low. Faction the Regulators. That's Mr. Freeze's gang. Different rewards here. Look like different types of crafting materials and XP. And then over here on the right side, we've got symbols indicating like how dangerous this is, which factions are here, collectibles, clues. Very interesting stuff here. I'm becoming more excited about this game. The more I see and the more I learn, and the more that they've talked about the depth of this city and what there is to explore, how there is sort of this history that you're going to witness here, and you're going to feel like you're sort of a part of it, and like you didn't know that the Court of Owls was running this whole operation the whole time. It's crazy.
With afterwards or before. There's just such a depth of nooks and crannies to explore inside our city, and I think that that's really unique to Gotham Knights.
The idea of a Gotham packed with references, miniature histories, and sinister mysteries is alluring. After all, this is the promise of a town with real backstory, that it's not just the people living there who'll help tell the story, but the city itself. Gotham has been many things to many people. It's appeared in comics, movies, and gaming worlds. It's been reinvented repeatedly, travelling through time with us from block colour 40s issues of Detective Comics to the grey monoliths of Christopher Nolan's trilogy. But all of those versions of Gotham have been snapshots of a city in its current form. Perhaps the most interesting thing about Gotham Knights' version is that we won't just see the city as it is, but hopefully learn what it's been.
Wow. Really cool.
We'll be covering Gotham Knights and offering exclusive footage all this month as part of IGN First. And if you
That's
want to see
really
what
cool.
we've already done, we have 16 minutes of the opening gameplay from the game, and we've revealed 28 new suits.
28 suits.
The Cobblepots, the Elliots, the Arkhams.
So just some things I wanted to look at here. We got to see a lot of interesting looks at the city. We got to see, that's Big Belly Burger, actually, that he drives by. So there's going to be lots of little landmarks and Easter eggs and stuff. There's Big Belly Burger. Of course, if you watch like the Arrow series or read any comics, Diggle and everybody would always eat at Big Belly Burger. Yeah, there's lots of And it looks like drifting in the bike is actually quite fun as well. Like it seems from the gameplay that we're witnessing here that the bike is going to control in a really fun way. I haven't seen Robin glide, so I'm curious what happens when you come out of teleport. Do you just fall? You know, can you glide with his cape a little bit, or is the cape really just sort of a frilly addition? It's not really a tactical use of the cape here. And then once again, they were showcasing that there's going to be indoor locations. There's going to be, you know, secret tunnels and areas that we'll find exploring the city. So, I don't know. I just wonder how it all plays out in co-op, you know. Will you and your buddy get separated and be finding different secrets in different places? Or, you know, will all this sort of flow together? And then, of course, this part is interesting. He comes out of teleport and instantly zips to the light post there. And then we're seeing this. This is some sort of, like, detective vision type thing here where we're able to see all the different things in the environment that he can interact with, like explosive barrels, lasers, all the different guys are highlighted. And I like how this is like really subtle. It doesn't, you know, detective vision like change the color of the entire screen and was, you know, oftentimes not so easy on the eyes. So I like the fact that you can sort of manipulate the HUD in this game, as the developers have said. You know, if you want a minimalist HUD or if you want a lot of things appearing on screen, you can have that. And this just seems like a lot less obstructionist. Also, it looks like we have some sort of mine that's been set up there. A little location there. And then we do get a glimpse here. This is the Gotham City Historical War Museum. Yeah, just kind of interesting that we're seeing parts of the city here that are, you know, things that cities would typically have. So it's, you know, it seems like buildings here have purpose and they're not just thrown in for set dressing for you to just glide and jump and climb on. And it looks like a lot of the buildings, there's a lot of verticality, but notice here we have, like, as they said, cities built on cities. You got like Stag Industries over here, and then you've got sort of this like slum here built under a bridge. You know, it's just like it really does capture what we've seen in Gotham City throughout the comics, throughout various movies and TV shows over the years. Soda Colo once again. So it's really cool. I like what they've shown so far, and I love that there's secrets to find and places that we can discover here. Just looking at some of the last bits of gameplay. I like that there's some elements of parkour here. You know, and that's not just grappling and gliding from one place to another. You know, there's different means of traversal here. And the Bat Bike comes in. And it looks like there are, you know, the streets look a little sparse. I don't know if this is recorded on console or PC, or if we can up the you know, traffic count in this open world game. But it looks like, you know, civilians are present in the game as well as enemies, and then, you know, cars and stuff are somewhat sparse, but I mean, at least it's not like empty streets here. So I think that's interesting as well. It's interesting to also see just sort of color that you see in the city. You know, it's got sort of that yellowish light that noir films tend to have. And then, you know, you just get that sort of neon color scheme. You get that smoky, foggy, you know, smoggy city look, you know, based on whatever the weather's doing and whether you're in some sort of industrial district or not. But yeah, I guess I'm starting to see in some ways how this comes across being like a next-gen game. I know we were sort of looking at like certain character models and various other things and saying, well, what is it about this game? You know, it doesn't really look like a next-gen game. You know, so it's kind of a weird crossroads that we're at here. But I'm starting to see different things here that in order to have this game running at a fluid like 60 frames and, you know, having a high resolution. And of course they showed this earlier in the in some of the earliest gameplay footage that we had seen with Robin and Batgirl. going after Mr. Freeze in the Elliott building here. So I thought that was really cool. Once again, they're showcasing a little bit of that from the earlier gameplay footage. So I'm glad that they focused on a character that we haven't seen much gameplay from. But yeah, I'm very curious about how this teleporting thing works. But it looks like it's going to be quick and it's going to be useful and kind of a cool way to disappear and then reappear in a more advantageous manner here. You can show up wherever you want to be so you can take advantage of the situation. And then getting to explore this, you know, stuff that we've only seen scenes like this in the comics, reading about the Court of Owls. But actually getting to go down into this and experience this part like Batman did, and seeing, you know, just this sort of scary, isolated, it's just very spooky that Batman goes down here and he's discovering this maze and these tunnels and these people running this secret operation that he hasn't known about his entire career. So I wonder what the opening of the game is going to play out to be like. It may be something with Batman where we get to play as him, or maybe we'll get to discover what his last moments were like. What was he investigating? And maybe that's the part on the map screen that's missing, is that they're calling it, you know, the Bat Mystery or whatever you want to call it. You know, maybe it's investigating some of Bruce's final clues that are left behind for this ultimate mystery here. Maybe the Court of Owls got to him in some way or another. So, really interesting stuff. I've been a little confused about how I feel about the game. Am I excited for it? Am I not excited for it? Sometimes the combat looks a little weird and a little clunky, and then other times it looks really dope and I'm really excited about it. But it does appear to be very different from the Arkham games, so I think we sort of have to put ourselves in those shoes. But I'm very excited about this part where we start seeing the Talons come in, and it's like you're in this concrete maze, and you're forced to fight these highly skilled individuals that appear to be, you know, enhanced. So I think this will be a really fun experience for the Knights, and I do like the sort of weather details that we're seeing here, where it's like mysterious and foggy and smoky down here. It's really hard to see, and you don't really know if some of this stuff might be hallucinations or if it's really something that's happening. But yeah, just looking at the cityscape, I mean, it just really looks like they've taken a lot of what was done in Arkham Knight, and that city was like really well developed and fleshed out, and it felt lived in. And I think this city even more so. I think they've done an even better job with designing this Gotham City to be really large and fun to explore, and just so many places that you could go. I think patrolling the city in co-op is going to be dope, and I really hope that we're going to be able to have a lot of replayability here. Hopefully not when you finish the game or do all the random crimes or whatever. You know, hopefully there's still more stuff you can do and you could come back to, even if, you know, the game's beaten. Maybe random crimes continue to happen, or you could replay certain missions or something. You know, there's got to be a reason that we're grinding to get all this gear and level up our characters and whatever. You know, maybe it's not that there's more DLC or content coming to the game, which I wouldn't rule out. But yeah, hopefully there's more here to learn and do. But yeah, I like the way that bike drifted there, and I do like that we're seeing the occasional car and civilian here. It's really interesting just seeing all the different lighting and other effects. But yeah, it makes me a little sad that we don't get to be Batman and go into these tunnels just like this, you know, with just the glow stick and just the mysterious way he just walked through those tunnels and started doing detective work, and then one of the Talons shows up. So I mean, it's just really cool, and it's an interesting article. I think they pretty much narrated the entire article that IGN had earlier today. So you're not missing much in terms of reading that. But yeah, just talking about how the different families, the Waynes, the Canes, the Arkhams, the Cobblepots, and the Elliots have sort of each had their turn with the city, and there's different districts inspired by the big families that sort of, you could say are the founders of Gotham here, and had a big impact over the city across, all time here. So I think that's really cool. And it's nice that they developed this in sort of a VR setting, and that they were looking at the cityscape and looking at from a ground point of view of like, okay, should we have this building here? Should it be this tall because it's kind of blocking this other thing? And, you want the city to feel natural when you're driving down these roads. You don't want it to feel weird, like there's a road that's a dead end, or it's like leading into some weird roundabout that has no purpose. Like, a lot of video game cities end up being plagued by just like being rounded like a racetrack, or just having like weird dead ends and stuff. You want it to feel like this city was created by people, it was planned out, it was architecturally, designed to serve a purpose, not just to be visually pleasing here, or just to be some backdrop. So even the map screen here looks really cool, that's showcasing the height of the buildings, the depth of the city, and the different districts, and hopefully we'll come to know Gotham like the back of our hand, and sort of be able to navigate the city and know the different districts and be able to tell them apart. And when if I turned off the HUD and a certain crime was happening in a certain district, hopefully I'd be able to use landmarks and my knowledge of playing the game to be able to find my way in there. So very interesting. I'm very excited for this. So I don't know. I thought I wasn't going to be very excited when I was reading the article earlier, but I'm glad that they attached some gameplay to this and at least, gave us the narration along with it. I do love a good developer diary, and it's really cool that we got to see a little bit of Robin traversal. It's something that we've kind of been robbed of. We've just seen bits and pieces of gameplay and such thus far, short little 2-minute videos on Twitter. So once again, very excited for this game. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed this coverage. Let me know what you think of Gotham Knights in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, ring that notification bell so you don't miss out on any future videos and live streams here on the channel. We'll be playing Gotham Knights when it comes out on October the 24th, and stay tuned. We'll see you then. Take care.